Okay, good afternoon, good evening, Hannah. Good evening, Professor Brandon Kolo. Yes, thank you for joining us. Thank you once again. Okay, cool. So we'll just take a few seconds to wait for participants to join us. Okay. Okay, so we take this conversation from now up to about 2030. So yes, it's about an hour or more to talk about everything and share information and advice for postdocs and current PhD. Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. So I will begin by allowing our panelists to introduce themselves. Maybe let me start with Hanne, Dr. Anne Schreiter for German Scholars Organization. Now, this is what we'd like to hear from you. Give us a brief introduction of yourself and particularly your journey after your PhD.
Yeah, hello, welcome. Thank you for having me and for inviting me. Yeah, my name is Anne. I'm the executive director of the GSO, the German Scholars Organization. We're a nonprofit in Berlin, and we support researchers who are interested in a career in Germany, either in academia, but also in non-academic sectors. It's called the German Scholars Organization because it used to be for German researchers who wanted to return to Germany, but now we're basically supporting researchers of all backgrounds who are interested in particularly a career in Germany. So I myself, I'm basically a person who switched sectors. I did a PhD in Switzerland and a postdoc in the US. And then I was thinking, okay, what's the next step? And a career counselor at the university in the US was asking me, so Anna, how much are you willing to suffer for a career in academia? And I think he wasn't so serious about asking that, but I know what he meant. I mean, you have to make an informed decision and to know what is important to you, what you want, to then decide, is really academia the right path for me, or can I use my skills and my background also for something else? Because there's a whole big world out there with other opportunities. And this is how I basically switched into the nonprofit sector, and I've been there for the last 7 years. It's a story of chance, serendipity, but also a story of setting yourself up for these chances and serendipity through networking, through talking to people. And I'm pretty sure we will be able to discuss that later. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Schreiter, for that brief introduction. I'll go to Professor Brado Kolo.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Taiow, and thank you, other members of the panel and our audience. My journey is unique. It's unique because I'm an African in Germany. And when I arrived here, we didn't have that much of Africans in universities pursuing, especially PhD, as you would imagine. I arrived in Germany from the UK in 1999. And studied my PhD at the Max Planck Institute. Then it was for metal research. Today it's called the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Systems. And during my PhD, it wasn't until maybe 5 months before my PhD, or maybe 6 months before my PhD ended, that I started thinking about what I would do after the PhD. I was active as a PhD student, not just at the research level, but also at the social level within the Max Planck group. And I was part of a football club at the university and also part of a Max Planck Institute. And when I finished defending my PhD, I didn't know what next to do with myself. I have to be frank. Yeah, I applied for jobs. Some of them I already attended interviews. I had rejection letters. Yeah, it's good I say this. I received all kinds of rejection letters. And a colleague I played football with then said to me, oh, I have a gentleman who was working in our department, and he's now a professor at the University of Karlsruhe. If you want to do a postdoc, I could speak with him. And that was it. I was asked to come up to Karlsruhe for an interview. And the same day I had this interview, I received my letter of appointment for my postdoc, and that was it. So it has to do with networking. You need to be visible. You need to come out and tell people what you're feeling, and people need to know your skills, your availability. People need to see you as being active. People need to see you as being a contributor to the advancement of whatever is going on in society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Brian Okolo. I mean, you almost already answered one of my questions. I was, planning to ask the panelists question on, how was it immediately after PhD? Maybe we're still going back to that. And I mean, how you felt immediately after PhD. Many people have said it's like more like an anticlimax. You finish your PhD and then the question is, what do I do with my life? Where do I go from here? So maybe we'll talk about that briefly after Dr. Ibrahim Muritala introduces himself.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Taiow, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for, for organizing this nice event. I believe we all need more of this conversation. So I'm Muritala Ibrahim, a Nigerian. I came to Germany after I studied chemical and polymer engineering from Nigeria to do my master's in Brandenburg University in process engineering plant design. Then I had the opportunity to volunteer a lot with IST, with ISEC, with all these organizations, and I had the opportunity to briefly work with a company in Poland, then later in Netherlands, then came back to Germany to pursue my PhD, but at first I was working as a research engineer. Then later on I had to enroll for a PhD program in Brandenburg in TU Beck Academy Freiberg, so where I had my PhD. And during that time, I think I was more into volunteering, and I think engaging in developing different kind of network and creating partnership with different set of people, and also supporting different programs organized by DAD in Africa. And I think we have 13 centers of academic excellence, and I think I was deeply involved in 8 of them while the whole planning was being done and other things like that. So I believe volunteering has really led me into a lot of things. And in between, after my PhD defense, my professor encouraged me to go back to Nigeria, that I'll become a minister if I go back to Nigeria. And then I told him, well, it's not what you think. And fortunately, I enrolled into a kind of a network group. And from there, I had the opportunity to start a postdoc with the German aerospace. So I started, and I think after 1 year, several new institutes were created. And the director of the institute just called on me one day that, Ibrahim, I think it would be nice for you to be a group leader in this new institute. And I really want you to contact this new director. Possibly he might want to have an interview with you. And well, with all happiness, the institute director drove from Stuttgart down to have an interview with me. I thought it would be an interview, but it was just like a kind of coffee discussion. And from there, he said, okay, you join me. And we had the different discussion about what we can do in the new institute. So currently now I'm with the Institute of Low Carbon Industrial Processes, where I led the team of low carbon reducing agents in the German aerospace. So we have an annex in Cottbus, Brandenburg University, and also an annex in actually Zittau. So I move around to do a lot of things, and this is why I feel it's important for us to share some of the ways and the journeys that has led us into this. So, and I'm also a scientific entrepreneur, so I do a lot. So I try to look at research ideas that we can turn into business, and I encourage a lot of people to do this. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim, for that introduction. I'm actually a witness to all that you do within the community and as well as within your business environment. And I'm proud of what you're doing, sir. Well done. So if you'd like to ask any questions, but you can drop the questions in the chat box, or you just use the hand signal. I will call you to to speak when it is time. I want to go back quickly to Professor Brando Kolo. Just take us down memory lane, how it was immediately after your PhD. How was the feeling like? What was it like for you? Immediately you defended a PhD. a brief story. I mean, I defended my PhD like last year, and because of the COVID, it was online. So I was just at home, seated in front of my computer like this. And my wife was not here. She was at work. My daughter was in the kindergarten. I was just all alone myself. And after I defended my PhD, few minutes, the examiners came online, then shared my result with me. And then we greeted ourselves and said, bye-bye. And then I shut the computer, looked to the right, to the left, and I said to myself, wow, is that all? It's not. so how was it for you, sir? I mean, immediately after your PhD, how was the feeling for you?
Well, remember this was in 2003 precisely, and on the 4th of April 2003, I remember it was a rainy day, and I took a bus from my apartment to Busnell, where the Max Planck Institute is located, and I spent the first, I don't know, half an hour going through my slides. And I had a pairing partner. He had defended his PhD about 6 months before mine. And we spent time talking about possible questions I will be asked. And then I went to the exam hall, had my laptop open, put up whatever needed to be set up. And 20 minutes after I did that, people started coming in because it was going to be an open defense. And I recall I had 3 examiners. One of them, of course, was my PhD supervisor, as we call them in Germany, my Dr. Vater, eventually. And the other 2 were, one of them was the examiner from the University of Stuttgart, and the 3rd one was the protocol taker, basically. He was one of the directors at the Max Planck Institute for solid state research in Stuttgart. And so basically, we shook hands. I started my presentation. I was introduced and I started my presentation. And after that, I heard people clap, and then everybody left and left me with these 3 gentlemen. And so they basically rearranged the room. I had to sit, all 3 of them were facing me, and the questions came. And yeah, this went on for about 70 minutes, roughly. And after 70 minutes, they asked me to leave the room. So I left the room, I went outside. There were a couple of my colleagues that were outside. And I really didn't know what to expect, really. For me, it was a relief that that presentation had been given, and that at least I was able to demonstrate the novelty of the work that I had done for my PhD work. So the relief already came after my presentation, I would say. After 15 minutes, I was asked to come into this room. They asked me to sit down, and we had some small talk. And then the protocol taker, who is also a professor, read out my results to me. And up till then, that point, I wasn't really quite sure about the grading system of Germany. Yeah, so the having your 1 point, 1.5, 2, and all that. Yeah, so it's not a grading system I was used to. And normally, when you come into do your PhD at the Max Planck Institute, you actually cut off from the university. Everything you're doing is confined to the mentality of any of the institute, whether it's Fraunhofer or the Max Planck or any of the other non-teaching institutions that you have in Germany. And so, they told me what my results were, and my PhD father got up and hugged me. And I'll never forget that. This was a Dutchman, very reserved, extremely reserved person. And when he got up and hugged me, I knew something good had happened. So, and then he led me out to the foyer, and then announced to the people that were standing out there my results. And one of them had this doctorhood. Supposedly this was the person that was going to defend his PhD next after me. He put this hood on my head and people clapped. We had people who handed me flowers. We had people who hugged me. Some shook my hands very briskly. And inside of me, you know, what was playing through my mind was, oh, it's unfortunate my parents are not here. Mm. And unlike you, I wasn't married then. So, you know, I was a single person. And yeah, I had really nobody that came from my family because I was all alone in Germany. So luckily, before that, arrangements had been made for us to have finger food, to have some light music. You know, an area had been set up for people to sit down, relax, and talk. And we did that for about 3 hours, and everybody dispersed. And then I basically, you know, I was seated in my office alone for a while. I knelt down and prayed after that, and then packed my things and went home. Then gave my dad a call after I got home, yeah? So, but inside of me, I knew a significant aspect of the journey outside of Nigeria had been achieved. And I wasn't quite sure what would come next, but what was clear was that I was ready for the future, and that, you know, I was open to new opportunities. That was quite clear to me. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Professor Brando Kolo, for that story. I mean, it's inspiring for me personally, and I hope our participants also enjoy that. So from what you just said now, Professor Brando Kolo, and from the introduction of our panelists, it seems to me that we all agree that there is a period of uncertainty immediately after your PhD, a period where you definitely ask yourself questions. Okay, what do I want to do with my life at this point? Where do I go from here? It could be, that period could last for a few months. For some people, it could last for several years. The question now is to Dr. Anne, how do you know, how can PhD graduates manage this period of uncertainty when you finish your PhD and there's nothing on the table at the moment? How do you think PhD graduate can manage this period?
So of course, it's a little bit when you achieved something and then, you know, it's done, then you feel like, okay, it's super weird in a way, right? So I think it's important that, you know, also during your PhD, and I think a lot of you are still doing their PhD, of course, you're very focused on that. And that's the right thing to do, don't get me wrong. But also to be a little bit open and think about, what do I actually want? And this is not an easy question often to answer, because we're often, you know, we're often driven by external expectations that maybe family has or society has. And then we sometimes make these expectations that others have, make them our own. So it's kind of tricky and sometimes hard to sort of find the layer. What do I want? What's important to me? What do I want to do with my life? And this is a phase of exploration, and I think also give yourself some time after the PhD to take a breather. You know, it's totally fine. You just achieved something really hard. Take a breather. Maybe you already have some ideas that you can then explore. But first of all, like, yeah, also celebrate, just like Dr. Okolo said, just celebrate, you know, that you've achieved that. So this is number one. And then I think you can start the journey to explore what would be next. And I think what helped me at least is to first of all talk to many people, to get an idea of, you know, especially if you don't know what to do next. If you're pretty sure, I definitely want to do a postdoc, you know, then maybe you already have ties to labs, or it's important for you to identify labs or institutions that are interesting for you. Maybe start talking to PIs, starting to talk to postdocs at other labs to find like a good spot for you. Start that journey. Also communicate that, you know, you're willing to do that, say what you want, and then, you know, start that journey. If you're not sure and you're saying, I don't know if I really want to stay in academia, maybe it's something else, then it's also interesting to talk to people who have jobs beyond academia. That can be alumni from your university, you know, that's an easy access, can be former colleagues, just to see, okay, what are their job titles? Where did they end up? And is that something that interests me or not? And then just talk to them, meet them for a coffee, have an informational interview, ask, you know, what's important in this job? How did you go about the transition? And I think it's just a little bit like research, right? You have to gather data before you can falsify or verify a hypothesis. And it's the same a little bit with your life. You have to gather some data to make an informed decision.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anne. That's quite instructive. I mean, it's a phase of exploration, a phase where you need to sit down and think, ask yourself questions. What do you really want to do? It's very important. Now let's take it from the angle of being a foreigner in Germany. As a German, it's quite easy for you to even spend 1 year, 2 years thinking of what do you want to do next. You have all the time in this world. You are not under pressure from the foreigners authority for you to either get a job, for you to secure your stay in the country. So you have the luxury of time, you know, to plan yourself adequately. But looking at it from the angle of a foreigner, I'll go to Dr. Ibrahim. This period of uncertainty or the postdoctoral phase, how were you able to navigate before you got your first, maybe your first job after your PhD?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Taiow. I think the first point is, I think before the end of the PhD, there's always a ample time for you to really reflect. And I said reflection in the sense that possibly you see what is obtainable from your field, you see what is obtainable in the industry, you see what is obtainable everywhere. So, I mean, for me, I travel a lot and I try to see what is happening in different places. And this gave me a kind of insight to really see what is obtainable. For example, before I embarked on the postdoc, initially, I never had planned to do any postdoc. My idea was, after my PhD, I want to set up my company and I want to consult for big organization. And this has been my plan from day one. So, but along the line, it's important you go to some organization to learn their culture, to learn some things that you don't really have experience about. And this was one of the angles that led me into going for a postdoc. And as soon as I began the postdoc program, I saw it to be like, wow, I think I've seen what I want to see. I need to get out of this place. So because it's getting to a stage where I felt it seems some of the potential I really want to explore are yet to be explored somehow. So it's important for me to get out of a little bit of shell, then try to relate with some people and try to see what I can do. So as a foreigner, I believe there are several ways to this. And I think one needs to really understand yourself. So what are your plans? What are your goals? If you're a kind of person that says you want to go into the university, there is a way you can plan yourself towards the university. If you feel you want to go back to the industry, you can always plan yourself towards the industry. But the reality is that sometimes what we desire sometimes might not be available. So, and most times we end up managing what is available to us. And at that point in time, you just have to adjust. So, I mean, different things work for different people. So there are several fellowships out there, which I also saw that, oh, I can embark on some kind of fellowship programs to be part of some network and see what is happening. So, and it's also possible for me to go back to the research world to see exactly what is being done, because I like the space industry and I'm always fascinated about several things. I say, okay, let me do my postdoc in the German university and see what is happening there. So from there, I had to use the opportunity down there to reorganize my career, to really look into where I want to go as a scientific entrepreneur and also a consultant. So, and also see how I can also impact. So the bottom line there is, do you want to be a person that just want to make impact, and what kind of impact? So you just have to look into yourself. And because it's not so easy for me to say, do this, do that. Look at what is obtainable for you and what is available to you, and try to make the best use of the opportunity you have. We need to learn. There's a lot of knowledge out there. And this is why I feel, try to go to somewhere where you can learn something quickly that you can lean on based on the knowledge you have. And from there, you can move up the career ladder quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim. Now we're moving to talking about transition. You know, either you want to stay in the academia or you want to go into the industry. So I want to invite Dr. Anna to just give us an overview of the German academic system in terms of postdoctoral as a postdoc in a university or research institute. And what is the current regulation in terms of, okay, how long can a postdoc stay without a permanent contract? Just, take us through what we have currently in terms of course, we know, and I believe all participants know that in Germany now, today, your postdoc is like a temporary contract. So few years, renewal, maybe every 1 year, every 2 years, or 3 years, if you're lucky enough. So take us through that. How does it work within the German academic system?
Unfortunately, just like you described. So it's basically, of course, you get short-term contracts usually. And if the university or the non-university research institution gives you like a good contract, it's at least 3 to 4 years in the best case. Of course, it's also beneficial if you bring your own grant, if you have like a postdoctoral grant, or you can say, well, I'm willing to apply for a certain grant, then you can extend that period, of course, because you bring your own money. But especially when there are problems of, or there's the concern of, how long can I stay, and visa problems, I really advise you, even before you finish your PhD, get in touch with your university or a university or research institution that you're targeting as your next step. Get in touch with the international office, get in touch with people there, ask what are exactly the regulations here, what do I need? You have a lot of rules in Germany, and Germans really love their rules. But sometimes if you have someone who helps you navigate these rules, things can, be managed in a certain way. But I think it's really important that you get advice and you ask for help early enough, because even for Germans, German bureaucracy is a hellscape sometimes. So really ask for support. Also, when you get contracts, when you get contracts with a lab, also go always to the international office or the welcome office or something and say, is that the right thing? Do I need to do something else? So this is my advice: get support, get help there. And yes, the contracts are limited and usually short term.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Schreiter. So I'll go to Professor Brano Kolos, talking about staying in academia. For those who like to stay in academia, especially from the angle of a foreigner, what do you think are the challenges to be expected? What are the opportunities available? How can Africans maximize this postdoctoral phase in academia in Germany?
Good. Before I answer that, I just want to say something about a PhD holder. It's actually a fallacy to think that because you have a PhD, that automatically you get a job, whether it's an industrial job or a university-based job. Chances are that you might go for a year without a job. And this is a fact. It really is. And so when the opportunity arises for you to do a postdoc, you come with certain skill sets. And those skill sets allows you to even work on topics that are outside the realm of what you actually did for your PhD work. And you need to be prepared to take that choice. You really need to be prepared to take that choice. And for you as a foreign student, especially coming from a developing country, there's always this pressure that I need to be able to justify my stay here. And the only way I can justify my stay here is by proving myself worthy to be an academic, if you're in an academic environment. And so you basically need to distinguish yourself. You need to differentiate yourself. As I already mentioned 2 days ago, you need to be prepared to take advantage of your skill sets. One of the things you probably would have noticed as a postdoc is that when you come on campus, I don't know if that's still the case, but at least 10, 15 years ago, those writing their papers, your colleagues writing their papers, or the PhD students whom you co-supervise as a postdoc, they come up with data, they discuss that data with the main supervisor or the principal investigator. And typically as a postdoc, you are invited to be part of that conversation. You need to be able to proactively identify the publishing merits of the data this candidate or this PhD student is providing. You need to be able to even go as far as saying, can I have you arrange the data in a certain form and you write the paper? You actually write an article as an African foreign student who is proficient in English language. You write it and send it out. So there are certain things that you really need to do to start positioning yourself as a valuable member of this research team. You have to do that as a postdoc African. And you also need to, basically bring some activity within the group. You could prepare some African meal, bring it to the office. You could invite people to come to your apartment, no matter how small it is. You can invite people to come to your apartment. That way, you're not just, creating new contacts and new networks, but you're also strengthening certain bonds. And those bonds go beyond you. They go even beyond your supervisor. There are certain attributes you need to bring in, attributes that are even beyond your academic potential. You need to bring that into your postdoctoral experience. And even more importantly, what postdoc does for you is that it gives you a breathing space to actually think about what comes next. So your postdoc might be a year, it might be 2 years. If you feel that a year or 18 months is too short, you either already, as early as possible, start negotiating an extension of that, or you start thinking about how to apply for your own grant and get the current PI to accept you, to keep you longer. But whatever it is, you need time to consolidate your thinking. You need time to navigate through what exactly you want to do with yourself. This is so important. And it's unfortunate, as you already mentioned, that when you have residency issues, bugging you on a year-by-year basis, it's difficult for you to think. So being able to have a grant that keeps you for at least 2 years, and from the moment that grant starts ticking, from that moment you should be thinking about what's going to happen after 2 years. This is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kolo. I'd like to stay with you for the next question. And this is about getting to the pinnacle of your career as an academic in Germany. I've been made to understand that there is a need for you to gain international experience, for you to improve your vulnerability, for you to improve, your output, and to make yourself indispensable in your research group and things like that. How valuable is an international experience as a postdoc? And in addition to that question, as a postdoc, after your PhD, you get a postdoctoral position, probably in a new country or in a new city. Then you have to move, maybe your family, if you have a family, to a new country, to a new city? How do you manage that? How do you manage family, work family balance during your postdoc?
Excellent. First, I go with the first question regarding the internationalization of your personality as a postdoc. I speak from my own experience. As I said, I had this boss or this supervisor as a postdoc who exercised a certain level of trust in me. He knew that I could speak on his behalf. And he also knew that there's just no way he could attend all the speaking schedules he has in the year. So he had the courage to give me that exposure. Oh, Brando, I've been asked to give a talk at XYZ place. Can you prepare for that? And I willingly do it. And remember, I joined KIT in January of 2004. And a year after that, I already had a family. Can you imagine? A year after that, I already had a family. And so I had this little child whom I was trying to bond with. But at the same time, I knew that the only way I could justify the investment that the university was making on me was to prove myself indispensable within the university environment. And so, going to foreign labs to generate data, taking PhD students to oversee labs to support their data generation, co-authoring papers. I had to stay up late. I had to sleep in labs to be able to get these credentials or get these elements into my credential. And it is important. It really is important because at some point, you discover that when you attend conferences where your field of work is being discussed, people are referring to you. At some point, you see yourself being asked to chair a session at conferences. You see yourself being asked to provide somebody who could be a guest speaker. Quietly, you begin to see that you are a critical resource among your peers, and you need to walk yourself to that point. And the only way you can actually do that is by internationalizing your personality as a postdoc. And there is so much you can already do out here in Europe. The good thing is that Europe is, relatively condensed, so you can very easily travel through all 27 nations or 28 nations very easily. So wherever conferences are taking place, even some of those conferences, you find yourself and there is funding for it. You just speak to your supervisor about it. The money is there for you to go to give these talks and everything, because as you do that, you're also improving on his profile as a PI. You're improving on the profile of the university, of the lab where you're coming from. So the internationalization is important. If your supervisor doesn't speak to you about it, speak to him about it. This is important. Now, in terms of being able to, you have a family or you have to relocate, it's not easy. I have to say this. I say this because I had to suddenly uproot my family from Germany to Cairo. And it wasn't easy, but whatever it is, it's a conversation you must have with your partner, with your wife or whoever, or your husband. You need to be able to sit down and say, look, there is an opportunity for me to relocate to another country or relocate to another city. And these are the reasons why this opportunity are important, not just for me as a career, as a career driving entity, but also for the family. You need to find the facts that allows you make that argument. And then at some point, you need to pack up your stuff and go. But before you pack up, you need to discuss this with whoever your new employer is well in advance. I have a family and resources will be required for me to move my family from point A to point B. And then you negotiate that relocation package. This is important as well. Very, very important. So at the end of the day, wherever you relocate to, there will always be frictions that develop just from the relocation process. You need to bring some maturity in trying to handle it, handle the friction, and at the same time, break yourself into the new role that you'll be taking up at the new location. All of this could be stressful, but it is doable, I guarantee you.
Thank you very much, Professor Okolo. So before I take an opinion on internationalization and the work-family balance, I'd like to go to Dr. Ibrahim, because I know, Dr. Ibrahim, you are doing a lot in terms of looking at your profile. You have a lot of collaboration and relationship with universities based in Africa as a visiting lecturer at etc. Take us through that. How important is is that for your credential to be able to collaborate internationally, with universities, researchers worldwide?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Taiow. I think I will start from the first point I said when it comes to volunteering. It's very important that we should make ourselves available to make impact and to solve problems. At the level of PhD or postdoc, people believe you to be a problem solver, and they come with different problems, and you must be relaxed enough to manage them. Like Professor Okolo said, be matured enough to handle them. I think my journey to collaborate with a lot of African universities has to do with my passion for good education in Africa. And this led me to having several meetings, writing to different offices here in Germany. And I had the opportunity to meet several working groups within the DAD, and they informed me about different things they do with trying to establish a kind of center that will have similar quality of education for Africans in Africa. So, and I think then the discussion on the WASCA program, the SASCA program were being discussed, as well as the Centers of Academic Excellence. And I made myself available to volunteer in some working groups when they are doing some kind of brainstorming session on how they want to do this. And while those programs were being established, I also wrote to those universities because I knew they would be offering new courses, new programs. And like many of you can agree with me here that many courses we had in the past are changing. So there are different directions towards them. Some of them are transdisciplinary, some of them are multidisciplinary. So, and there's a need for people like you and myself to be able to offer those teachings. So I wrote to some of these universities and discussed with them that I would like to offer you some courses on ABC. And some will reply, some won't reply. So, and those ones that reply will tell me the condition that is available. Possibly I have to look for my own personal grant to come down, or possibly they can provide the grants. So majority will tell me they don't have the grant, and I try to look into what is possible. So some I have to offer my lectures online, some I have to travel down based on my holiday periods from my personal activities. So it has to do with the opportunities that are available. But I can tell you this, that we have several universities in Africa, and they need a lot of experts, well-educated people like every one of us here that can give them good direction, good teaching, and offer them new direction towards the future of education. So I try to make myself available for some of this kind of thing based on my capability at one point in time. So some I have to let go because, and some I have to recommend. I would also like to point out to something Professor Okolo said. I think the postdoc phase, or let's say the PhD phase, is a phase where you provide yourself with the opportunity to write. Try to improve on your writing skills. I mean, when they mention a particular topic and they ask you to write, make yourself available for this. Also make yourself available for reviewing, proofreading. This is something I feel I was able to do while I was doing my PhD and also doing postdoc. And this really led to a lot of opportunities where I'll be asked to be one of the editorial board members of some journals and things like that. So I think some of all these things play And when people see some of your works, they will call you, oh, you had this work on something on this area. We want somebody who can do this. Then there's another aspect which I feel many of us don't pay attention to, the aspect of curriculum development. I believe in as much as you're able to do a PhD in topic ABC, when you are asked to prepare a kind of workshop or training or even design a curriculum, I believe you can do that. And I think this is an aspect which I will always encourage many of my scholars to do, because when you make yourself available for things like this, several universities will want your service, not only for you to teach in the university, but also even to teach the people in policy making and governance and the likes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim. Briefly, Dr. Ibrahim, just to go a little bit more personal, I know a bit about your story, about you worked in different cities in Germany, and I know that you've had to move from one location to the other. How has that been with you and the family?
Well, the first thing is having an understanding partner who knows the responsibility I have embarked on for the past time. And I think everything has time, because possibly when you look at the kids, when they are growing older, you need to prepare more time for them. So all these I've made arrangement for. For example, when I had my first child, I knew I would be traveling a lot, because I was also trying to position myself internationally with my career path. I had to invite my mom to stay around to support my wife. So, and more or less like she had her homework. So I told her, okay, you are coming to do some kind of holiday plus work with me. So then, because I had to take care of her. Then after she left, then I also had to make my mother-in-law to also join, because I believe I need those kind of support mechanism. So when those ones are well taken care of, then I can also be able to concentrate on those things I'm doing. But for now, I think I'm very close to the family now than before. In fact, COVID-19 helped a lot, because it's changed a lot of things for every one of us, and it made us to be very close to the family. So I believe it's all about you planning with your partner and trying to cut your schedules according to the way you can handle them, because it's important. Because when you are overstressed, it won't be nice for the family, it won't be nice for your career. So you just have to manage all this carefully. And this is why I will always want to encourage all my scholars here that try to reduce your stress as much as possible. When you reduce your stress, it gives you more room to be creative and to be more productive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You are already taking us to discussion on mental health management. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to go to Dr. Anna so that we can balance this conversation. No, I do not want to give an impression that only non-Germans or Africans need to go out there, you know, to gain more experience or internationalize or collaborate. Anna, could you please tell us, from your experience within your organization, German Scholars Organization, I know you deal a lot with Germans who, you know, who are either in the US, in China, a different part of the world, doing research or trying to move up in the career ladder in academic. How has it been like for Germans, particularly, you know, within this system, and then going out to, you know, upgrade yourself to get to the highest level of their career?
So I would say that in Germany, internationalization often still means do your PhD in Germany, you go for 2-3 years to a very good lab in the US or in Canada, and then you come back and get a group. This is internationalization. So, but I think Germany is aware that, you know, yeah, this has worked for quite a while, but we're still, especially getting people in certain disciplines, this is like not enough. And it's also not, you know, in line with ideas of, you know, diversity and excellence in a broader scheme. We were talking about diversity yesterday, so I think that's an important topic here. So, but of course, there are lots of internationals also in Germany doing postdocs, like not only from African countries, but from Asian countries, from the US, from other European countries. And they already bring a lot of international experience to Germany, right? They already have that international experience while being in Germany. And I think what is important during your postdoc is not internationalization per se is the thing to achieve. Like, you know, what is internet, like what goal do we pursue when we talk about internationalization? So what we want is to get a more diverse mindset, new collaborations, you know, personal development, that kind of stuff. So how can you get that? First of all, especially when you have children or you already are an international in Germany, and it's hard for you for whatever reasons to go for 2 years to another country. I think internationalization also means that you build collaborations with institutions abroad, you know, have joint projects and stuff like that. This is also internationalization. The DAD offers short-term programs. If you can't go for 2 years, maybe you can go for 2 months or for 3 months, or go to conferences and have conference travels, and then, you know, talk to internationals there and build connections and build an international network in order to achieve what you want to achieve through internationalization, which is better science and better research, right? So maybe think about it that way. Yeah, so stress that you're already an international, and think about what do you want to achieve with the internationalization. And there's also a big topic that might be interesting, and Dr. Ibrahim mentioned it briefly, is brain drain versus brain gain. For instance, with Ukraine right now, you know, we have a lot of people from Ukraine coming to Germany right now, also academics. But then the Ukrainian universities say, well, that's pretty cool, but we actually want them to come back or have ties to us because we need these smart people also there, right? So it's always a matter of where do you want to be? What's a good place for you to be? And internationalization is not a thing per se. It's about what you want to achieve with it.
Thank you for that. So let me give you the participant opportunity to ask their questions. Are there, you know, any questions? Anyone would like to, you know, contribute to this conversation? Just give us a hand, because I can see a lot of PhD candidates here that I know personally, and I can see a couple of them who are already in the postdoctoral phase. I can even call 1 or 2 persons if you don't signal to talk. Okay, thank you. Emmanuel, you have the floor, please.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to the panelists. It's quite eye-opening. In fact, it feels good and very delightful hearing from your very deep experiences, from Professor Okolo, from Dr. Ibrahim, from Dr. Anne. Quite good. I just have this thing to say, although Dr. Taiow has already mentioned most of the things on my mind, but it's concerning the issue of language. Yeah, and I'm directing this question to Professor Okolo, because you came directly from the UK, you came to Germany, and you worked with the Max Planck. Me personally, I don't know how it is. At least Dr. Taiow can relate. We work in the same institute. I have tried severally, like 2 times since last year, to even try to enroll for another German course, which my scholarship could also cover. But then there's no time. There's no time, especially when you are doing your PhD. Like I had like a very serious structural shift from what I did in my master's and what I'm doing in my PhD. In fact, basically what I'm doing now should even be under construction engineering, because I'm developing materials that will be applied in the construction industry. So because I'm working under a professor who is a pure chemist. So I keep thinking, will I ever get to the point where I have to learn this language? Because you feel practically isolated in everything and in anything without this language. So I keep wondering, how did you manage this? What is there something I'm missing? Because even recently I applied and I was accepted for a course, but then when they told me the timing and everything, I said, please shift it to next year. Because it won't work. It won't work. So I would really love to hear your insights on this issue from Professor Brando and even Dr. Ibrahim. If there are a particular recipe, strategy I need to adopt, because if I come back, I'm like already spent. I mean, after standing 7 hours, 8 hours in the lab, I mean, I'm spent. So how will I even understand what they are saying? I mean, I did a course up to B1, but I can tell you, maybe I can manage to speak A2.
Okay, great one. Thank you, Manuel. So, Professor Brando, you'd like to answer the question?
Yeah, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that question. Again, I use myself as an example. When I arrived Germany, the PhD colleagues I had, PhD student colleagues I had, encouraged me to apply for, or at least, enroll in German classes, And I enrolled in the Fachhochschule, as it's called, in Stuttgart. And the timing was quite convenient because they had, they were structured in such a way that you could, the goal was to attract those that go to work and come in the evenings and probably spend about an hour or 90 minutes in classes. You get the chance to also network with people who are still learning German. And, it gives you a chance to also gauge your level of proficiency with other, foreigners or other learners. And, but I didn't do that for long. I did that for probably 2 years, then I stopped. And then when I started my postdoc, there was a need again to brush up my German. I mean, in between that, as I said, I played football at least 3 times a week. I was playing football with both, PhD colleagues and people from the university. And there was an opportunity to, speak broken German if there was anything like that, really. But you quietly start building up your vocab base. This is very important, and trying it out. And so when I started my postdoc, I had actually had a private teacher. I use that word because one of my work colleagues who came from Slovakia, she spoke so good German, and I said, how did you learn this? And she was doing her PhD then. She said that she had a teacher, and she had a one-on-one teacher, and this teacher was really good in terms of what it takes to pass on new languages to an adult, and this is important. And so I enrolled with this teacher, and I did that for about a year. My German did improve, it really did. But I think what really changed the momentum and the energy with which I could speak German was when my daughter was born. And she spent the first year with a Tagesmutter. So her first language, of course, was German. And it would have been terrible if I couldn't speak with this little girl, so I had to pick up German. And at some point I reached an agreement with my wife. My wife said, you just speak English with her and I speak German with her. And that was the agreement, and it stuck. But the good thing is that you get to your German proficiency gets to the point with all these mistakes, with all these corrections, it gets to the point where you're at least able to sustain a conversation. You're able to negotiate. Your writing skills might not be perfect, but it gets you to the point where you can actually, there's nothing wrong with you saying, you know what, we can have this conversation in German in an informal format, but anything that has to do with formality, I would prefer to do it in English. You can say that as well. It's no problem. And at the end of the day, it has to do with being able to at least comprehend, reason, and speak meaningfully, and with sufficient amount of clarity that people don't think you're saying the opposite of what you're actually saying. This is important. Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir. Thank you. I hope, Emmanuel,
Thank you too. Thank you, Professor Brando.
you
Yeah,
are,
because
you are relieved.
that is the major problem. Sometimes when I listen, I can pick out 60% or 50%, but to participate in this conversation, to say something, immediately I just open my mouth, I just go blank. I can't find the words. So, to be very honest, it's quite frustrating, but I think I have got some tips from what you said. Thank you.
Great, Emmanuel. So I'd like to go to Dr. Lydia Radoli for our contribution.
Thank you, Dr. Taiow. Thank you so much for the contributions, especially for colleagues, Ibrahim. We've been with Ibrahim for such a quite journey. I think we were together when I was going through that phase. So do I go back home? Do I stay? What should I do? So eventually, and I want to talk about the experience of after PhD and now return and what I'm feeling right now. And I just think that when I share this, I can now get insights. I try to make the step now, as Anne talked about. You need to be, know exactly what you want to do. So and so I actually got a what it's called Jobsuke visa after my PhD, and I had 1 year of visa, but I was not going to stay because I came to do my PhD. I had a 10-month-old baby. So by the time I was finishing, he was going for 5 years. And that was a big decision for me because I wouldn't have stayed longer without him. And I wasn't sure if I stayed with this one visa, I would get a job that will make me stay. So I returned. And so returning was more, again, you start tamarking. Actually, I worked with my certificates for a whole 2 months. And then, of course, I started as an adjunct lecturer in 2 universities. Later on, I was employed quite pretty. After 3 months or 1 semester, I got a job at the university where I work currently. But now I've worked there. I'll be beginning my 3rd year in January, and I'm already feeling like I need a space whereby I can again engage in the level of academia that I had in Germany. Why? Because the experience here is that there's a lot of work that you're expected to do or to perform as a scholar, as an academician, and so you don't have enough time to personal develop. The other thing is that we have the Commission of University Education, which has high expectations for you to grow. For example, move from a lecturer to senior lecturer to associate professor. There's a lot that is required from you. And so actually what I'm seeing is that if you got a chance, for those of us who came back home, get a chance again to do a postdoc, and within the year, before your PhD becomes stale, then at least you can push to the points that the Commission of University Education is looking at. I am more so of being that to internationalize. That's where I am at this point. Like, I'm looking at a point whereby if I get a postdoc and I do it for 1 year, 2 years, and then I can be able to grow with the points that is required, and then you ascend that ladder of what you want to become, and also open to what would be the opportunities in the industry. So I just want to hear insights for those of us who returned and are doing well in academia, and there's a lot of, the strife is there, but you're still there, trying to make the best out of it. But then there's also a chance for you to continue their postdoc. What would be the opportunities to make that transition? What is required? And are there any networks that you can start to engage with? Because I'm at a point where I've done 2 applications, and I'm hoping that if it goes through the next year, I should be able to start my postdoc, but still not yet there. So what are some of the insights that our colleagues there who are already done this could share with us? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radoli. So I'd like to throw that over. Who want to go first? Dr. Ibrahim, I can see you are moving.
Yes, I think I would, my major advice to Dr. Radoli is try to do more of collaboration with some senior colleagues and also your peers in the let's say in the academia. So possibly those in Africa and those in Europe, try to find people, do a lot of collaboration. For example, maybe you try to develop a proposal together, joint projects together to solve a particular problem that you feel is in their need in your locality or in your country. Then I think you can use this to build that kind of skills that relates to project management and other things like that. So that is number one. Number two is joint publication is a vehicle. And the reason why I call it a vehicle is that it travels a lot than the way you might see, and I think you can participate in this kind of activities where you look into a researcher or a scholar that is into a field and you feel you want to develop something out of that, then you can collaborate to write a kind of joint publication. So I've mentioned joint proposal, joint publication. Then the other aspect is possibly try to do more of networking, attend conferences, and try to look at other people doing similar thing like you in your country, form network, use that network to collaborate with another network, and from there you can build different kind of working groups and different kind of interest groups. So, and this might lead to some think tank like we had earlier today, and which will be able to do some bigger projects within your region or your country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brahim. So to all the listeners and participants, if there are anything you want us to touch on, any topic at all, just drop it in the chat box directly. We have about 15 minutes to round up this conversation. Now, I want to touch quickly on transition to the industry, because I know there are a couple of people in the postdoctoral phase or current PhDs who are already thinking, I want to go to the industry. There are two schools of thoughts. And the first one is that the best time to get into the industry is immediately after your PhD. The other school of thought is from one of my colleagues, my mentors, who said to me, Taiow, it can never be too late to get into the industry. So, so what do you think? I'd like to begin with Anna. What do you think? Transition into the industry, how late, how early can that be?
I think it doesn't matter so much the time. Of course, the earlier, maybe the easier it is for you because, you're a little bit more flexible and so on. But I think it doesn't matter so much when, but rather how you explain and you present yourself, and you're able to translate why and with what kind of skill sets you want to have or you want to contribute to a certain job. So basically you yourself had to have a time of reflection saying, I'm really ready to do this, and this is now the time, and I go for it, and I know exactly why I want to do it and what I bring to the table. And once you know that, you will be able to find a job, right? Immediately after your PhD, maybe also after 3 years of postdoc and so on. Of course, it gets a little harder because the longer you stay in one sector and the better you know this sector, it's like a little bit harder to then transition and do this kind of translation, of course, right? But I think number one is have the decision made for yourself why you want to do that, and be aware of what you can do and what you can bring to the table. This is a little bit of introspection, and then also the ability to communicate to someone who doesn't maybe know what a postdoc does or what a postdoc is, or that I think is important.
Thank you, Anna. Professor Polo, your opinion on that, sir?
Well, I personally take my professional career, I put it on the balance, and I try to look at the risks and the rewards of it. This is very important. So when when it flashes through your mind that, I would like to go to industry, as Anna just mentioned, you need to have an idea of why you want to go to industry. If you feel that now you have a PhD and getting into industry will give you an opportunity either to head a group or transition along the management line from lower management or junior management to middle management up to higher management. If that is the goal, then you really have to have a very clear plan. You'll be surprised that with your PhD, it is not sufficient to get into upper management, even middle management in industry. You might have to do an MBA. You might have to take some management courses to justify that decision to get into industry. This is important as well. And in terms of whether you should do this right after your PhD or after you've done a postdoc, it's up to you as an individual. As I already said, the moment you finish your PhD, you need at least 2 years of reflection. This is important. It really is, because you know that, okay, I'm going to spend the next 2 years working on topic A, and I can organize myself in such a way that I deliver the minimum requirement of what this topic involves. But my free time, I want to use that free time to explore what really interests me as a person. Remember, for 2 years, you have a steady income. So in terms of the funding that could keep you for 2 years, that is guaranteed. So you have enough time to really reflect on, what really would I want to do with myself? Should I remain within the academia line, or should I transition into industry? I also have to let you know that when you start applying from academia as a postdoc into industry, there are certain expectations industry requires of you. And one of those, of course, is your ability to be original in whatever you do. So when you come into industry with your PhD or coming from postdoc, the person hiring you expects that, one, you should be able to head a group or manage a group. This is very, very important. Two, you should be able to come up with something novel, something original. You need to be able to bring that into the new industrial environment you're coming in. The moment you fall short of that, the next reorganization taking place in industry, you're out. No kidding. So these are things that you really, really need to seriously think about. And that's why I say, the moment you take your career, put it on a scale and look at the risks and the rewards of any decision, any career decision you decide to make. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. So Anna, I can see your hand.
Yeah, just to add on what Professor Okolo just said. So number one is you're somehow overqualified because you're an expert in a very special field, and you're also underqualified because you don't have experience in non-academic sectors. But you have the ability to communicate very well why you fit to a certain job. And this doesn't also only mean that you have to go into an R&D position, right? In industry or small and medium-sized companies, there are ways or many different job opportunities, but you often have to figure out what these jobs are even being called. What does a key account manager do? What does an information architect do? What does a science liaison manager do, right? There are lots of jobs, and when you don't even know what kind of keyword you have to type in the Google search, then these jobs will also not present themselves to you. And I think that is important, and also to learn maybe through courses. We also offer that. We also have webinars on that and support when you rewrite your CV or rewrite your cover letter, and to sort of think like an employer. What do they need to know about you that fits the job? And I think that is important, to think like an employer, and to also beforehand talk to people, conduct informational interviews, have a LinkedIn profile. Not only that you have a profile, but also to use LinkedIn as a database to actually search for people, for jobs, for organizations, for companies, to get inspired what you can even do, and how the skills and the job titles are being called. I think that's also important, to do quite a bit of research and talk to people to even get a feel for what's even out there.
Thank you, Dr. Anne. I'd like to stay with you because I was about going into the topic of jobs and career outside, academia, or outside, the kind of industry that we envisage. Now, you as a person working in a non-profit, sector, and perhaps we have people here who would like to also go into that area. I volunteer for a non-profit sector, Horizon Resource Network. I spend my time to do this kind of thing. But of course, perhaps in the future, I'm thinking of maybe I want to take up a permanent position in this organization. what would you advise? How can people get this kind of job in a not-profit organization in Germany? And what are the possible job titles that we need to look out for if you're looking for opportunities in this sector?
So first of all, similar to what I said about industry, talk to people, identify organizations, use LinkedIn, talk to alumni of your university, and so on. And then I think the titles, for instance, in think tanks, nonprofit organizations, associations, are often the German Referent, for something, whatever. But especially in more international organizations, they have also English titles and work with, English in an English speaking environment. So I think that is super helpful. And once you start, look for a big organization that you're interested in, a big nonprofit organization, and then check, okay, what kind of job titles do people have? You can find them in LinkedIn, for instance. What are their job titles? And then you can refine your search and look, maybe this kind of job title is elsewhere and interesting, right? Maybe think about also do a quick, almost like a volunteering or a quick visitation in a way, where you just say, can I just volunteer for a few weeks or a few months or something like that, and then it works similar to a position in industry. There's also a program that might be interesting for some of you, that is for young leaders in some, not all, but some African countries and some German countries. I send you here the link. It's called the African German Leadership Academy. So check that out, especially if you're interested in capacity building, sustainability. That might be something that's interesting. It's for people between 25 and 40 years of age. So I think you fit that frame.
Thank you, Dr. Anne. Just one more question to you, Dr. Anne. For us as foreigners in this environment, yes, it is about getting a job after PhD. Yes, it is about getting a stable job, but it also has to do with the salary, because there's a threshold for you if you want to extend your stay in this country. For example, for you to get your blue card after your study, maybe in the STEM field, there is a threshold, maybe about 48,000 euros or thereabouts. And, in the other field, maybe it's higher. The question is, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, just give us a range. What is the range of salary in the not-profit sector? If you are, you get an employment, maybe as a project manager, program coordinator, or whatever in the non-profit sector, what is the range of salary a PhD should expect?
So it depends. For instance, when you work in a bigger foundation, you can expect a bigger salary. Maybe you start between 50 and 60,000 per year, I would say, roughly like that. This is like a normal salary. If you're like in a smaller nonprofit, or you start in a lower position, it might only be maybe between 40 and 50. Whereas of course in industry, when you start between 60 and 70 or higher up, depending on your discipline and your background and so on. But I think this is roughly the range that you can expect.
Thank you, Dr. Annie, for that. Okay, are there any other questions? I'd like to just allow the panelists to give us their closing remarks on everything that we've discussed. And if there's anything that we have missed out of this conversation, we have about 2 minutes. You can also, add them to the discourse. I'll start with Dr. Ibrahim.
Well, thank you. I think the most important point has been said. Try to ask people, network with them, get to know what it's like if you want to stay in the university or in the academia, and try to see, what is obtainable for you in the industry. And possibly if you want to start up something, look into yourself and see if this is something you want to do. So there are several doors. The most important point is for us to look at the one that we are capable of managing, maybe in the short, long, and medium term. And try to collaborate with people, because I feel it's an aspect that I think we people that call ourselves PhD holders don't do mostly, because like I said, many of these challenges are multifaceted, and it's important for us to collaborate with one another. So you might be from the humanities, that does not say a person from engineering cannot work with you. You might be from the social sciences, that does not say somebody from applied sciences cannot work with you. So try to collaborate, try to network, and take your time to look at some problems around you that you feel you can solve and try to bring them into reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brian. Professor Brian Okolo, the last word, sir.
Yeah, what I would like to say is that the worst thing that can ever happen to you is to stand empty-handed after your PhD work. Really, that is the worst that can ever happen to you. My advice would be, and this is a very practical advice, 9 months, at least 9 months before your PhD is concluded, start applying for all kinds of positions worldwide. And I mean worldwide, so that at the end of the day, you have the option to pick. This is important. At least 9 months before your PhD is over, start applying worldwide. And please don't cherry pick where to apply to. Just apply everywhere worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Okolo. Dr. Anne, while you give us your closing remarks, you can also take time to share some information about, what you do in German Scholars Organization, the opportunities available, how people, our members can also be part of the organization.
Thank you so much. Number one, don't skip self-reflection. That's important. Think about what's important to you and what you want. Number two, know that statistically academia is the alternative career paths for people with a PhD. There are lots of other options. You just need to find them. And number three, be proactive and don't be shy. Say what you want. When you know what you want, say what you want, and don't see it as like market yourself or whatever. You have to be visible. You're all of you are super high qualified, super smart people. You have to, you can bring a lot to the table. You have a lot of potential. So yeah, make this potential shine. You have a responsibility being so smart and having achieved so much already, that you just use that for the best and for something that that your heart burns for and that that's important to you. Also seek advice, get advice. A lot of these things is just you need to have some tools and you need to know how to do it. There's no rocket science, it's just you need to know it. And this is, for instance, how to craft a non-academic CV, how to write a good cover letter, how to conduct informational interviews, how to leverage LinkedIn as a tool. And for this, we definitely can help. So get in touch with us. So our website is www.gsonet.org. There's also an English version, and we also give career advice also in English. We look at your CV. Usually that costs just 30 euros for CV check. If you say right now, oh, financially, it's a little bit tricky, that's totally fine. We do it for free and you pay it forward somehow else. So just let us know if we can help. And we also have a lot of free advice on our website, like free webinars and so on. There will be a webinar on careers beyond academia coming up during the Postdoc Appreciation Week. Just check Postdoc Appreciation Week Germany and then you'll find it. I'll also find the link for you in a second. And then I think that's important for you also to seek advice and ask people to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hannah. Thank you, Professor Brando Okolo. Many thanks to you, Dr. Ibrahim, for your time and for your awesome contributions. Personally, I've learned a lot. I have gained a lot. I'm highly empowered. And I'm sure all our listeners and participants today have also gained one thing or the other. It is our desire that every one of us will advance in our career, especially as foreigners in these environments. And I believe that we'll leverage on what we have had here today and learned here today to, to push forward and to keep going on strong. Yes, thank you very much for your time. So right now, we'll now move back to the main room as we conclude today's session of the conference. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, many thanks to the panelists.
Thank you.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Thank you.